Kelly just shared with us that everyone around us, everyone, Kelly, me, you, everyone has a song worth singing. So what do you think? Do you believe that? Have you ever doubted it for yourself? My personal answers to those two questions are very similar to what I just heard. Yes, and yes. Now, my saying yes to believing it came about after I discovered something. And my saying yes to having doubted it for myself is a result of the times when I lost sight of that very same something. And that something is self-worth. And that's what this lesson is all about today, self-worth, inner perfection, divine purpose. It's not a life lesson that's been necessarily easy or smooth for me, but it has been one of the most powerful discoveries and rediscoveries that I've ever had. And sometimes the rediscovery, that reminder of my self-worth, well, sometimes it comes from people that are around me, like you. Sometimes it's in something I've read. Sometimes it's in something that I see. I take these calla lilies here. Now, the calla lilies, they are my favorite flower. They have been for a long, long time. But it wasn't until several years ago when I first offered a lesson on this idea of a song worth singing that I came to learn a little bit about the symbolism of the flower and the way in which these flowers actually come into being. You see, the meaning of the white calla lily is magnificent beauty. Magnificent beauty. And yet when the calla lily is first harvested, it looks even more tightly closed than this one is right here. It doesn't have the fullness of the bloom, and so you might not come across the words magnificent beauty right away when you first see the calla lily. And yet I think we could all agree that this calla lily has within it the potential to bring forth a very beautiful, very full expression of its bloom. Because once it's harvested and it's sent to wherever it's supposed to go, whether it's here on our platform, nurseries, your homes, you're told to just trim away a little bit of the bottom of the stem, like has been done to this one. And when I think of the lily symbolically, I think that's the point in time where this calla lily begins to get an idea of its truest of potential. But there's another step. You have to place the calla lily in some water in order for this bloom to come alive, in order for it to express itself, in order to let its music begin to soar, as that song said. And you know, I've been able to see both similarity and difference between the process that this calla lily moves through and that which we as human beings move through in terms of finding our true purpose, of being able to express that purpose. And so we're going to take some time and explore that. And so I'm just going to put this back where it was, and we'll circle back to that a little bit later in the service. Now, what struck me in terms of similarity between human beings and the lily was that idea of its inner potential. Because to me, it's the same thing as our teaching about the presence of the Christ in us, that divine potential that we have to express whatever is our true purpose, to sing whatever song is ours to sing. And what I saw as being different was that not once since that calla lily was brought here yesterday afternoon has it stood up to me and said, "Eileen, don't you put me in that water. I'm not going in that water." No, it hasn't resisted bringing forth its truest of expressions in any way. And yet, why is it that sometimes we do just that? Why is it that we cover up or build what we think are protective walls around our individual magnificent beauty? Why do we sometimes keep our songs in the silence? Well, I happen to believe that more often than not, it's a matter of not feeling worthy of what it is our hearts are inviting us to express. Now, you think of kids. Kids zoom right past any idea of unworthiness as far as I'm concerned. Think of our kids here. Every Sunday, they come down these aisles, they're strutting their stuff, they're running and skipping up these stairs, they turn around, they're waving at mom and dad and grandpa up in the balcony, they're belting out the peace song like they're on Broadway. They even get on the microphone sometimes and they lead us in the prayer for protection in front of hundreds of people. No inhibitions whatsoever. I think of my own sons. When they're toddlers, maybe up through kindergarten or first grade age, they loved The Wizard of Oz, the movie, The Wizard of Oz. Every single day when their dad or I would bring them home from their sitter when we got home from work, they would just beg and plead, please, Mom, please, Dad, put the tape in the VCR so we can watch The Wizard of Oz. And it wasn't so that they could just sit together on the couch and watch the film. Oh, no. They acted out the entire movie. They would grab their baby blankets and they'd make witches' capes and so forth, and they'd find toys that were close enough to props that were in that movie. They knew every line, every song, every step, every crooked point of that finger from the witch, every aspect of that movie. And not once did they stop in our living room and wonder if they were worthy of expressing in the way that they were. They didn't care what anybody else thought. They didn't care if we didn't join in with them. They just did what brought them joy. They sang the song of their hearts with abandon. Every day, I become more and more convinced that our children are wonderful sources of wisdom for us in our lives. The second source of wisdom that we have is the Bible. And so I looked to Scripture to see what I could find about this idea of worthiness. And one mention that I found was in the book of Ephesians. It's the opening verses to chapter 4. And this is what it says. I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Historically, the writer of Ephesians was reminding the Gentile Christians of the history of Israel and the inheritance of Jewish Christianity, and how it was that was now an essential part of the tradition in which they now stood. And those particular verses have been interpreted by some to stand for the call of God to the Christian people, to show themselves worthy of the riches and grace in their lives every day by manifesting them, sharing them within their community. So in other words, remember your traditions and your heritage. Incorporate them into your present-day experience in a way that works for you. And sing of the richness of your life so that everybody can hear. Now that may sound like 3 easy steps, but it's not always as easy as it sounds. As a very young child, around 7 years of age, I remember that I began to internally question God and religion in terms of how they were being offered to me. I was raised in a Catholic and a very devout home. And yet, when I would hear something in church or in my Sunday school experience or from members of my family, oftentimes it just didn't fit with what I was feeling in my heart. And at the very same time, I was going through some medical challenges, health challenges. I was finding that I was fainting a lot. I was passing out a lot. And so I was having all these tests done, and to a 7-year-old, big machines and wires and hooks and clips was pretty scary. I was being given medicines to take, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. No one would tell me. All I knew was that I couldn't be a normal 7-year-old child. I was told not to run, not to ride my bike, not to swim, not to climb the trees in our backyard, not to get overheated in any way whatsoever. Now, you try telling a child not to do those things and see if they understand. And so I kept pressing. I kept asking what was going on, because my friends would just tease me. They would make fun of me, and that didn't feel good. And so I finally forced my parents to tell me what was going on. And they sat me down one day and they said, "You have borderline epilepsy." That's not a big word, but to a 7-year-old, that's a big word. And it's a scary word. And I just wanted to know why I had this thing. Parents didn't have an answer. They wished they did. The doctors were doing what they do to try to figure it all out. But I was 7, not patient. I was 7. And I kept pressing. And then one day I heard, "Please, just listen to what we tell you and give it all up as a sacrifice for God." I wish I hadn't asked. Because in my heart, I had been thinking about a God that was a God of love. Someone, something, that was good and that filled my heart with joy every time I thought of it, even at that young of age. And now what I was hearing was that God was mean, that God punished with illness, that this was a God that I had to suffer and sacrifice for, that this was a God that I was unworthy of. And the years since, and with all of the various healing work that I've done, I've been able to see that it was at that point in my life that I began to build the walls around my heart. See, unlike the calla lily, unlike our children here, my sons and the Wizard of Oz, I allowed unworthiness to become a major issue in my life. And at the very same time, I began to lose any sense of an authentic relationship with God. Now, as I moved into my adulthood, the epilepsy was long gone, but the walls continued to be built around that part of my heart that housed my truest, my deepest of expression. I just made it thicker and thicker, added one brick right after the other. For example, I had many friendships, but only a carefully chosen few were allowed inside the walls. I built a fairly successful career, and I'm not proud to say this morning that in the early years of that career, I walked over some people to achieve my goals. It's not hard to do when you check your feelings and your emotions outside the walls. There were times where I even held back expressing the deepest of joys that I wanted to share with my husband, as well as the deepest of concerns that I needed to share with him as we began to drift apart. And for so many years, I held back that utter emptiness that I felt of not having that authentic relationship with God. Why did I do all that? Because I didn't feel worthy of my own feelings. I didn't think they were worth expressing. And the fear of rejection and ridicule was far too great for me to face. Who was I to declare that I needed more than the God and the religion of my own heritage? Who was I to think that I was worthy enough to start speaking words that would in all likelihood bring to an end a 30-year relationship, 19 of which were spent in marriage? And who in the heck was I to think that I could leave a successful career and think that I was worthy enough to pursue ministry? Have you ever had experiences like this? Experiences of wanting so much to let out who it is you truly are, and yet you stay behind your walls? There are some people in this world that live their entire lives behind walls, and I think that's one of the greatest tragedies in life. And I don't want anyone in this room to be one of those people. Today, I want you to choose to smash through whatever it is that might be in the way of you claiming your worthiness. And yes, it takes courage. And no, it's not always easy. But it doesn't have to be difficult. You could listen to the lyrics of a song, and they'll just burst your heart wide open. You could attend a lecture, read a book, go away on retreat, spend time in prayer and meditation, hear something in a Sunday lesson, any number of activities that you could experience such insights so clearly that you can't help but live your truest of purpose. Thoughts, ideas, feelings of unworthiness never enter your mind. Early on, those walls that I constructed around my heart, they were far too high and too thick for those easy methods to make their way through. And so I found out about self-worth the hard way. Several years ago, I found that I had highly elevated levels of several toxic metals in my body, and my doctor and I agreed that I would begin a detoxification program to try to get rid of them. And he told me, and he was absolutely right, that there would be significant side effects to this regimen. And each aspect of it lasted about 2 weeks, and on the third cycle, it literally brought me to my knees. I was in so much pain and so sick from the side effects that all I could do one night is curl up in a ball and lay on my bathroom floor. And I laid there for over 5 hours. And then finally, when those side effects were done and gone, I got up and I found myself standing right in front of the mirror on the wall in my bathroom. I wasn't looking very good. Think of celebrity internet mugshots. Pretty close, pretty close. But it was then that I finally got it. My body had been screaming at me for 5 hours, "Don't you know there's more to you? Don't you know that you're worth more than this?" And there was such a tremendous shift inside of me. I was standing there finally shouting a proclamation of my own worth. I had no idea what to do with it, but it felt good. And as I allowed myself to use that night, to use that experience as the foundation for my future, I came to more deeply understand the shift that had taken place that night. It began a process of healing for me that is more deeply rooted than any physical healing I could ever experience. It brought healing to my childhood years and the religious teachings of my youth. Although we continue to have very different views of God and different ways of theological interpretation, it was my heritage and the very example of my family through which I came to understand and witness what it means to have faith and how it is someone can stand firmly in their own convictions. It was this tradition and heritage that, just as Scripture noted earlier, it was now going to support me as I continue to bring forth my unique song and begin sharing it with everybody around me. And so now, I just have to ask, what about you? What about you? Can you hear the song of your soul? Are you ready to not only claim but proclaim those riches and grace that are yours by divine inheritance? And are you willing to take down your walls brick by brick by brick and share your song in this wondrous symphony that we call life? My prayer for you this morning is that you will realize and that you will claim your worthiness the easy way. Listen to the music, read the books, open your hearts. Take down the walls and create this sacred space for your music, for your song to come forth. Because each and every one of you has a unique song to sing, and our world wants to hear it. Our world needs to hear it, but it's up to you to sing it. Everyone has a song worth singing. Sometimes we lose sight of it. But as long as we hold on to that deeper belief of the never-ending presence of God in us, we will always be given the reminders. 2 days ago, Friday morning, I was at home. I was working from home, just getting started in preparing the lesson today. And my phone rang. And I saw that it was a call coming in from the office here, and it was Tammy Rising. She's our director of communications. And we exchanged our good morning pleasantries, and then she said, Eileen, do you remember how over the last several months when our planning team has come together, we've been visioning and we've been having discussions around how it is that we might expand our efforts in public relations for the ministry, how it is that we can have this ministry and all that we have to offer here more recognized, more available, more known throughout the greater community. And I said, well, of course, I remember those discussions. She said, well, I just got off the phone with a reporter from KCTV 5 News here in town. He called because he said he's doing a piece around 2012 and all the hoopla of this perhaps end of the world that people are talking about. And he called us because he wanted to have a Christian perspective on all of that. He wants to come over this afternoon and do an on-camera interview to be included in the piece. And so can you come to the church this afternoon and let him interview you? Well, my mind had two thoughts come to it almost immediately. First thought was, this is not mine to do. This is for Reverend Patricia to do as the senior minister of this church. The second thought took me to our ministerial team here at the ministry. And of that team, I'm third out of three in terms of tenure at this ministry. Tenure as a minister wasn't mine to do. But then reality kicked in. Reverend Patricia was in the air on a plane, Bob was away on retreat, I was on the ground and available. I still resisted. And I asked Tammy, I said, please, can I have 20 minutes? Can I just have 20 minutes or so to get off the phone and just think this through a little bit more clearly? And she said, sure, but I do have to tell you that we have to get back to the reporter as soon as we possibly can. And I said, that's fine, got a deal. So I got off the phone and I was still just sitting there at my desk. And I got quiet and I just asked for clarity. I sat there, started to rock a little bit gently back and forth in my chair, looking straight ahead at a computer screen. A computer screen that was reflecting words back to me that were the opening paragraph of a lesson about self-worth. I got it again, but this time the easy way. It was mine to do. So I called Tammy back, she called the reporter, got it all set up, got myself ready, drove to the church later that afternoon, and we did the interview. I sang my song. And a week from Tuesday night, we can all watch the 10 o'clock news together to see if I came anywhere close to staying on key. But to Thank you. To me, it doesn't really matter. What's important to me is that I sang my song. You, all of you, you have a song to sing. And our world needs to hear it. Claim your worthiness. Begin to let your music soar. Please, please, let the world see your magnificent beauty. God bless you.